بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأصلي وأسلم على من بعث رحمة للعالمين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Brothers and sisters, and welcome to another segment of Ask an Imam, where myself and Imam Osama answer your most pressing questions and the questions that aren't particularly pressing to you either. Let me just turn that on mute so I don't hear my own voice.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How are you doing, Sheikh?
Alhamdulillah, how are you, Sheikh?
I'm very good, Alhamdulillah. How's your week been so far, Sheikh?
Good week, Alhamdulillah.
Yeah. Alhamdulillah. So in the we're kind of like in the business end before Ramadan, right?
Absolutely.
And now is the time to plant the seeds so that we can harvest them in Ramadan. Inshallah. I heard the khutbah that you gave about Shaban.
The month of Shaban, yes.
Yeah, mashallah. Tell me a little bit about that. What
So we looked at, obviously because the time is very short for the bayan, we couldn't go into a lot of detail, but we looked at the importance of the month of Shaban and the practice of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the month of Shaban and the ahadith in relation to that. So one was the hadith of Usama ibn Zayd radiallahu anhu, who asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that, Ya Rasulullah, I see that in the month of Shaban you fast a great number of days, more than any other month. Is there a specific reason for that? So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, and I'm paraphrasing, that it is a month that people neglect because it falls between Rajab and Ramadan. And what we said yesterday is in our day and age we neglect 11 months, not just 1 month, or rather 10 months.
Yeah.
We know Dhul Hijjah and we know Ramadan, because Eid falls in one.
And even in those months we sort of specify the days, like
Laylatul
Qadr and Ashura.
So, unfortunately. But anyway, so the month of Rajab is a sacred month from the time of Ibrahim alayhi salam. It was a time where even in the time of shirk and jahiliyyah, the mushrikeen respected the sanctity of this month, and they would not go into conflict and war if they were able to avoid it. So it was an important month, Rajab. And then Ramadan obviously became important with the coming of Islam in the year 2 of Hijrah. Ramadan the fast of Ramadan became compulsory. So Rasulullah said, because people neglect Sha'ban, I like to up my ibadah and my worship in the form of fasting. It is also the month where the deeds of the entire year are presented before Allah Azza wa Jal. So that we have a weekly sort of Monday and Thursday, deeds are presented before Allah, and Rasulullah like to fast those days for that specific reason. And then on a yearly basis, in the month of Sha'ban, all of the deeds from the previous Ramadan until that Sha'ban are presented before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Rasulullah liked that his deeds are presented to Allah while he is fasting. And we also looked at the ahadith where Aisha radiallahu anha said that at times I would miss some days of Ramadan, obviously, due to a woman's nature, and because of the service of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I would not get to make up those days until Sha'ban came about. She also says that I've never seen Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam fasting an entire month consecutively other than the month of Ramadan, and the closest to it was Sha'ban. Another narration from another Sahabi states that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would join Sha'ban and Ramadan at times, so fast the entire Sha'ban, entire Ramadan. This is just to show the importance of Sha'ban. I don't think people who are not in the habit of fasting regularly should fast the entire month of Sha'ban. Actually, there's even ulama who say if you want to fast continuously in Sha'ban, then do so in the first 15 days and then give yourself a break for like 14 days, 15 days before Ramadan comes, in order not to weaken yourself and then in the month of Ramadan have problems. But the idea is, as we know, when we start fasting those first 2 to 3 days are very difficult. And apparently it's because the body is adjusting to a different way of
it's a entirely different body clock, isn't it?
Yeah,
so everything is
a
changed.
different time of
intake of
feeding,
food, sleep,
and a lot of toxins are sort of attacked by the body in that time. Because you're depriving yourself of food and it's not used to it, so it goes chasing after foreign bodies in your body.
Allahu Akbar.
And because of that you get the headaches and what have you. And then those of us who have addictions, it's even more. You've got like a caffeine wild, right? Addiction or a nicotine addiction or any addiction.
Chocolate addiction.
Chocolate addiction and things like that, sweets. You kind of so it's best to deal with that before Ramadan. Get rid of those symptoms in Shaban so that Ramadan comes and you're in the flow, as it were.
Hit the ground running.
Yeah. Also there is a hadith that was not mentioned yesterday, but that Rasulullah ﷺ did not approve of fasting 1 or 2 days before Ramadan, because those are the days of shak. So unless a person is learned and they know that they are fasting Shaban and they should not, because you may think, well, we don't know if Shaban is 29 days or 30 days, let's just fast that last day and join it up with Ramadan to be on the safe side. But the problem there is that you don't have the niyyah. And the niyyah can only occur when Ramadan has been announced.
And the difference of niyyah is obviously if you're doing a fast of Shaban, the niyyah is going to be that it's a voluntary fast. And the niyyah of Ramadan has to be that it is a fast of Ramadan, the obligatory fast. So if you leave it hanging as if to say, I don't know if it's Ramadan just yet because I haven't seen the moon and haven't sighted the moon, so I don't know, there hasn't been any confirmation just yet, so I'm going to fast anyway, just in case. And if it is that Ramadan, then this is my fast for Ramadan, and if it is Shaban, then it's my fast for Shaban. The problem with that is there's no
definite
definite
intention.
And you need definite intention. It's like coming to Dhuhr and saying, it could be a fard and it could be a nafila, I'll just pray anyway. It doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, okay.
So it's preparing yourself, warming up for the month of Ramadan. And obviously month of Ramadan is the month of the Quran, so if a person can incorporate some reading of the Quran during this month of Shaban to get into the flow of things. And it's one of the nafahat of Allah Azza wa Jal, the special seasons where He blesses. We know that on the night of the 15th of Shaban, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, according to the narration of Rasulullah ﷺ, forgives the sins of all believers except those who have hatred and malice in their hearts towards others. So it's also important to, in the month of Sha'ban, to try and reconcile our differences with family members and neighbors and people that we are usually in contact with. Some things may have happened, disturbed the relationship. So one should try to remove those and reconcile so that they are not deprived of the forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so this happens every Sha'ban, right? This debate about whether you should do Shab Barat, which is the night of the 15th of Sha'ban. According to some, that is the night where the decree of the entire year is given by Allah to the angels. And it's a very weak opinion. Actually, the decree happens in Laylatul Qadr, as we know. That is the strongest opinion. However, because this hadith that Allah Azza wa Jal forgives sins on the night of the 15th, there is some leeway to sort of say it is a special night, and if a person wants to worship and do some ibadah, however individually or in one's own home, and not make it into a sort of celebration, that is the problem. So people gathering in the masjid and all of this, that is not from the sunnah and should be avoided. But others have this very strong point of saying, doing the ihya and worshipping in the night of Shab al-Barat or the night of the 15th, specifically because it is the night of the 15th, it's a bid'ah and or what have you. And that cannot be said, because if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala extends His forgiveness on that night, and you want to show gratitude or put yourself in the way of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then there is no harm, and ulama have spoken about this, as long as it is not done as a sort of mahfil, right, like a big party with food and what have you, because it is not a Eid, but one can celebrate and rejoice over the forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam states in a hadith Qudsi that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Ana 'inda dhanni 'abdi bi." So if you are expecting forgiveness on that night,
Allahu Akbar.
And
it's a good way of looking at it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What is also important, so we talked about fasting, we talked about reading the Quran, or making a program, starting to read the Quran in the month of Shaban. We talked about the night of the 15th. And we talked about reconciling our differences. What is also important is to make tawbah in this month, so that you enter into Ramadan without the baggage, especially of major sins. And obviously tawbah is from major sins or from persistence on minor sins.
Yeah.
So it's important to make tawbah in this month before the coming of Ramadan, and that is obviously offering 2 rak'ah salah, concentrating, and then raising one after that, making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you can generalize, sort of asking Allah to forgive all previous sins, minor sins, major sins, sins committed in public, sins committed secretly, and really implore Allah's forgiveness. That way you enter into Ramadan without the shackles of sin, and hopefully excel in worship and getting close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and in spirituality in the month of Ramadan. We may say that it's good practice to make that tawbah on the night of the 15th, and then it gives you 2 weeks to sort of focus your efforts and to try to the sins that you have repented from, to try to deal with those and before the coming of Ramadan, because it's really a sad state that every Ramadan comes by and it goes and we come back to the same
thing, same cycle, same
or
habits.
even worse, committing those same sins in Ramadan because they have now become an addiction, and we can't.
Yeah, and even the blessed month of mercy, even that's not enough for you to motivate yourself to leave off those sins, and it's a pretty dire situation when you're like that. So, subhanallah, definitely, man. My khutbah was kind of on the same lines as well, of preparing now, as opposed to waiting for Ramadan to kick in, because everybody has that mindset, right, where Ramadan is coming, and Ramadan is when the shaitan is locked up, so then I can really get started, right? Right now, I'm always going to lose that battle. So, but then the problem is you end up missing valuable sort of time in Ramadan because you're too busy sort of getting into the motion and trying to get used to the new habits and stuff. And you could have done that before Ramadan, where you've gotten used to the habits, and then when Ramadan comes in, you're just
in the flow.
Yeah, in the flow. So Allahumma musta'an, inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all the tawfiq to benefit from this Ramadan, inshallah. May Allah allow us to see Ramadan as well and to benefit from it. There's many people who have, last Ramadan they witnessed some fasting and some prayer, but this Ramadan they're no longer around. So, subhanallah. Alright, let's go on to some questions, Sheikh. The first question is, I'm from Kashmir. Subhanallah. We've got some long distance questions from the Azad Kashmir. And my brothers are living in the UK. I want to do a bank job. I don't know if that usually means you want to rob a bank, but I assume you want to work in a bank, inshallah. Okay, but my brothers are against this. Does Islam allow a woman to work in a bank? And Islamically, I think there's a follow-on question to this. Do I need my brother's permission to work in a bank, or to work generally, I suppose? What is the female rights in Islam with work? Because the Prophet ﷺ's wife, Khadija, worked. Okay, so quite a loaded question. There's a lot of things going on there. Maybe we can handle it one by one. So, working in a bank, I think we covered some of this as well before.
Working in a bank is not permissible because it is an institution based on riba and interest, and that is haram. So working for a bank is a big no, right? And it makes your income haram. In relation to a woman working, absolutely, a woman is free to work as long as she is maintaining the principles of Islam in her work, and she does not need permission from her brothers in order to get work or to work. If she is married, permission from her husband would be needed. If she is not married, then she does not need permission from anyone. She knows her situation, and if she has the need to work, then absolutely she can work without seeking permission. However, working in a bank is not an option whatsoever. You know, there's no way to sort of say it's a necessity or what have you.
There's plenty of other occupations that you can seek employment in, and even if it's like, oh, but you know, financial institutions, there needs to be some sort of Muslim presence in financial institutions. We can create our own financial institutions. MashaAllah, we have brothers and sisters.
Work for a Muslim bank.
All over the place that have financial know-how. So let's create some alternatives, guys. Next question is, Assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum salam. Could you explain the barzakh after we die? Is this after the trials of the grave or before? Jazakallahu khair. So the barzakh it's not really it's not before or after, is it? In terms of the grave, it's a realm or a dimension that a person goes into when they pass away, isn't it?
Barzakh begins when the angels come to take the soul, and it ends when you are resurrected on the day of Qiyamah. All of that is barzakh. And I think we've had a session, I think a few weeks ago, where we've talked about what happens.
The steps that take place after death. And one of those is the barzakh and what happens in there. We'll
just refer the brother or the sister to that link.
And it's closely, so the barzakh and the grave are closely
the barzakh takes place in most cases in the grave. However, if a person dies and is not buried, dies at sea, they are still going through barzakh. As we said, it's from the moment that the soul is taken out to the time where a soul is resurrected. So barzakh is basically the station between two stations. So you have dunya, you have akhirah. Akhirah begins with judgment, dunya ends with death. Anything in between is barzakh.
Manzila bain al-manzilatayn, right? A bit of the mu'tazila going on. MashaAllah. So that covers that. Assalamu alaikum. Is there anything we must do Islamically when we move into a new home? So there's a common practice, Sheikh, right? Of like, you get a new house, you move into it, and you have a little bit of a khatam, recite a bit of Quran, you get the Imam to come over and he will like do some recitation as well, and then some laddu and stuff. Some dood patti. What's going on there, Sheikh? Is that like some custom? Where does it come from? What's going on?
I don't know. We don't know that Rasulullah sallallahu actually there are Sahaba who invited Rasulullah to offer salah in a certain place after they had acquired it. I think there is something.
So there's an asl there,
yeah, I think so.
Allahu Akbar.
But obviously that was because Rasulullah was blessed, and him being in a place is a blessing for the owner or the person that's going to live or dwell there. But,
nice.
So Islamically there isn't anything. It's good to start with some form of worship when you get the keys and you enter. Once you've moved your things in and what have you, you start with a form of worship, because in the birth, the first thing we do is we do azaan and iqama in the child's ears. When a couple get married, the sunnah is for them to offer salah together. So anything that is new, a sort of 2 rak'ah, salatul shukr, thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, also seeking protection from shayateen and what have you. It may be a good practice to recite Surah Al-Baqarah. I mean, in entire khatam of the Quran, I don't think it's it's not in the practice of Rasulullah sallallahu to sort of do khatam. But reciting Surah Al-Baqarah is useful to sort of remove shayateen, and because there'll always be a time where the home is empty before you enter it, or perhaps the people that were there before, you don't know what lifestyle they had, so there may be shayateen present in that home. So the reciting of Surah Al-Baqarah from beginning to end, or even playing it on a device, may be useful. And if you want to celebrate, you can celebrate. There's nothing wrong with the laddus and what have you, but just don't consider it Islamic.
Yeah, that's not like an act of like. Well, it can be an act of ibadah based on the intention, but in and of itself, it's not. It's not something that's masnoon, not something that's like the Prophet ﷺ did or anything like that. But I suppose, Sheikh, in these sorts of situations, the more you do, the kind of better, right? So it's like if it's one thing like reciting Quran, and that's a good thing, doing like sort of 2 rak'ah of nafil whenever you get something new, for example, of shukr and stuff, it's a good thing. The more of a good thing that you do, the better. I suppose it all comes down to intention as well, why you're doing it. One of the reasons why, so I know someone who recently got a new house, and they invited me over. I did something like this. And I made it clear that the intention behind doing this it's got nothing to do with like the Prophet ﷺ. It's got nothing to do with the Sunnah. But what we do this for is to firstly bring down barakah in the house. Secondly, there's some dhikr. The first thing that happens in this house is the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Shayateen go, and more importantly, the shayateen of our nafs and the shayateen that are around us, they also depart. So there's no ujub, there's no kibr, there's no pride or arrogance, in acquiring this home. Look what I've got and you haven't got, and so on and so forth. And there's this sort of like those negative facets of the human character. They're also gone away, because when you engage in the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with something that's new that you have, you are reminding yourself that this stuff comes from Allah, this stuff belongs to Allah. He's only loaning it to you for a short period of time of your life, and you're going to die and you're going to leave it all behind, right? So these sorts of things, when reciting the Quran and doing dhikr, when you have a new home, that's what these things are designed for. And that's why I think this practice has kind of survived amongst sort of like the ulama, and they've sort of recommended it and encouraged it, and it's kind of gone down through our traditions. So now we've kind of inherited it, but it's become like a party and a Quran thing as well. So you come together, recite a little bit of Quran, and then live it up. MashaAllah. So just make sure you differentiate between the two. Alright, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Is a muqtadi supposed to say Allahu Akbar behind the Imam each time the Imam pronounces it? So I'm guessing this is like, in the takbir al-intiqal and stuff, so whenever you go from ruku' to sujood or something like that. Or
the muqtadi has to say Allahu Akbar. However, he or she whispers Allahu Akbar.
What if they don't say Allahu Akbar? Is there anything in them?
If they don't say the first takbir, they haven't entered into salah.
Yeah.
Takbiratul ihram
True.
is compulsory, so to say the first Allahu Akbar. However, the problem is that the Imam is saying it loudly and often, and we've addressed this a number of times in our congregation, but you still hear it.
Cool.
So when the Imam says Allahu Akbar, you hear 10 people saying Allahu Akbar. And there is absolutely no need for it. It has to be done silently, just like you are going to recite Fatiha or whatever behind the Imam, or the way you say Subhana Rabbiyal A'la.
I kind of get why people say it loudly, because it's Takbiratul Ihram, right? So you want to make sure I've said it. There's no doubts about it. I get. But the funniest is during the salah, right?
Yeah, going
because
into
muqtadi doesn't necessarily need to say.
No.
If he misses those takbirat, so say the takbir for going into ruku', if a muqtadi misses that, and he doesn't say Allahu Akbar, he just goes into ruku' following the Imam. Nothing on him, no sajdas to sahu, and there's no obligation to say that. But the funniest is when they do actually say it, they say it loudly. You're like Allahu Akbar, and then behind you is just like Allahu Akbar.
Yeah, they've got this khushu', right? So they're stretching you out.
It's like, are you like leading another salah behind you?
They may be leading some jinns.
So funny, man. Allahu Akbar. And other times as well in the salah, like coming out of ruku', Rabbana wa lakal hamd.
It's actually annoying. It's annoying.
Yeah.
Because it shouldn't be done, and when the Imam hears Allahu Akbar, he thinks he might have made a mistake, right? Because that's the way. Although when the Imam makes a mistake, we're supposed to say Subhanallah. Yeah, because if you say Allahu Akbar, he's thinking, oh, this guy's just saying Allahu Akbar.
Yeah, I've heard that a couple of times as well.
Yeah. But if you say Subhanallah, then the Imam sort of thinks, what this guy realizes.
Kind of like an Imam would like stand up, and instead of sitting down for tashahhud, he'll go straight up into the standing position, right? So in order to make him sit down again,
Allahu Akbar,
Allahu Akbar, because you say that every time you move, right?
Yeah.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
Calm down. Yeah.
Allahu Akbar. So to answer the question in short, aside from the facetiousness of the answers, no, you don't have to necessarily say the takbirat other than the takbir of the ihram. behind the Imam. So you're okay if you miss the takbirs.
And
if you say them as well.
they should be done silently.
And if you say them as well, they should be done silently, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. If you are unable to pray Jum'uah some weeks due to unplanned classes in college or classes scheduled later on Friday but online, and you need to commute home, how would you pray Jum'uah? I suppose the question is Jum'uah fard on the person who's going to school or college or university, has classes at that particular time that they're obliged to attend, and if they don't attend, there's going to be some form of ramifications for them. What do they do in this situation, Sheikh?
What is an obligation is an obligation. There's no, studying is not a necessity that permits missing Jum'uah. Because if we allow that, then the person who has a shop will say the same thing. I've got customers, and the person who's got a meeting at work will say, I've got a meeting and I can't, and this is specific what Allah Azza wa Jalla is saying, that إذا نودي للصلاة من يوم الجمعة فاسعوا إلى ذكر الله وذروا البيع. Leave your occupations. And he mentions trade. He didn't say leave your playtime. So the one who's playing and just watching TV, they have to go to Jumu'ah, but the one who's doing some serious things like working and in a meeting or studying, they don't have to attend.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. And I think in this country you sort of, you have the right to your religious practices. So if it's the first is you make a request to
there's got to be that confidence there though.
Yeah,
as well, right?
this is it. You have to feel you can make that request.
Yeah.
First it's a request, and then if the request is not granted, then you push it on to sort of you take it further and you make a complaint on religious grounds that you absolutely have to take time away and attend Jumu'ah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's different now in the lockdown where Jumu'ah is actually not compulsory. So if you are somebody who's not going to the masjid, you are doing your studying online, you are working online, you're generally not going to the masjid, there isn't space in the masjid, there may be some leeway there, because as we said, Jumu'ah in the pandemic is not an obligation on all people, but still, if you don't make the arrangement now, then when the masjid is fully open and people can actually attend in bigger numbers, you'll find yourself in that situation. So
yeah. Okay. SubhanAllah. Always a difficult situation.
And the way to do it, Sheikh, is
Go on.
to sort of ask to speak to your lecturer or your teacher or whatever privately, and you explain yourself to them and your circumstance. It may be that they allow you to miss and sort of give you a way of catching up, a recording or something of that sort, and then you've dealt with the problem. You just make it known that it's important. But if they don't, then you escalate the matter and make an official complaint that you have made this request and it has not been granted.
I think just in relation to that,
We've got a cameo from Sulaiman, guys. Bismillah, mashallah.
Some people basically they go to work just before Ramadan or whether when it's Saudi, they are not known to go into the masjid. I used to deal with people like that. They are not known to go to the masjid, and suddenly when Ramadan comes, suddenly they have their little topi on their head. They have to go and then they start giving attitude. So
Sulaiman, give it mashallah.
The key to it is to start from the beginning.
Yeah, the key is to start from the beginning and to ask in the best possible manner.
That's right.
Right? Don't. If you ask in a harsh way, and then a person may get sort of defensive and because of that reject your request. So
I suppose sticking to the actual sort of subject matter of the question, which is around students and stuff, and I suppose this is where because in work situations, I suppose the higher up you go in life, the more easier it becomes to negotiate these sorts of terms with people, right? So the younger you are, the more obliged you are to certain things, the less leeway you have. So if you're in like sort of primary school, secondary school, there is no way that someone's going to let you, your teacher is going to let you miss class. even if it's for a religious obligation. And I think we've experienced stuff like that where
Yeah, but
with students.
the way to deal with that then is to establish the Jum'uah in the
school,
especially
right?
if it's secondary and you know they've reached the age of puberty, college, establish it.
Do it.
And if you can't do it yourself, then get your parents. And
Yeah.
actually, your parents should be involved in that discussion. Yeah.
MashaAllah. Christ College Finchley. I remember we were a group of quite a large group of Muslims, and we would do Jum'ahs on Fridays. We would do the Dhuhr sometimes. When Ramadan kicked in, everyone was praying, right?
Yeah.
So we used to do Dhuhr in the playground and in the fields and stuff.
That's it. Yeah.
And Jum'ah
And
stuff.
I've always said, you know, you start with a request to do it. The initial response is going to be they're going to deny you that because staff are on break between 12 and 1 or whatever, 12:30 and 1:30, and they don't want to supervise, and they can't let you do something as a group without supervision. So what you do then, you just, you know, do it in the corridor, do it in the playground,
and,
do it in the dining area, and when it's in front of everyone, then they have to work in order to
MashaAllah. It's like grassroots da'wah, man.
Yeah.
Like the Prophet ﷺ coming out in Mecca with his companions.
That's it.
And everyone seeing them. It's
Yeah.
just like, what are you doing? You're not allowed to do
then
this.
it becomes a problem, and they want to contain it,
Mm.
and they will make the arrangements.
Yeah. So inshallah, obviously do that with the, you know, without causing the fitna and problems.
Don't be rebellious. in your
don't be
approach.
like, oh, this is like, I'm
Anarchy.
take over the school.
Yeah.
Nothing like that, of course. Astaghfirullah.
And if you've got Muslim staff, then maybe approaching them and, you know, asking them what they do for Jumu'ah and whether they would be willing to supervise and things like that.
Yeah. Question is, Assalamu alaikum wa alaikum salam. Imam, we know that drinking alcohol is haram. In other schools of thought, like Imam Shafi'i, it is haram to touch, to carry, to sell, and to drink. I have seen many Muslim brothers and sisters working in supermarket checkout or where they are stacking shelves, which involves carrying, touching, and selling. Are there any differences of opinion between the four schools of thought which permits Muslims to sell, touch, or carry alcohol? Jazakallah khair. Obviously, you know, drinking alcohol is haram, but
Look, the first thing is from the adab and the etiquettes of questioning that a person should ask a question about himself. What other Muslims are doing, that is their responsibility, and they should ask about themselves. So if you are not in that situation and Allah has spared you from that, and your work does not require you to, you know, touch alcohol or stack it up in shelves and what have you, then you know, لا تسألوا عن أشياء إن تبد لكم تسؤكم. Do not question it. But anyway, since you've asked the question, obviously all of the schools of thought are agreed on this because there are very clear ahadith where Rasulullah says that the curse of Allah is on the person that makes the wine, and the one who carries it, the one who serves it, and so on and so forth. However, living in the West and in this non-Muslim sort of environment, some ulama have excused a person to sort of touch it if it is not something that they do regularly, right? So it is a haram, but because you can't avoid it and the majority of your work is actually going to be halal, right? You're stacking food and other items. If you can avoid it somehow, speak to your manager, what have you, then good and well. And you know, we've heard of this. I think there was a sister serving at a cash point at a checkout, and there was this uproar from a customer who brought alcohol, and she said, look, you know, I'm not going to touch it, you scan it, scan it and you put it in the bag.
Self-checkout.
Yeah, that's it. And he did not accept. So this shows the sort of commitment that she has to her deen, and there's a way of doing that, but not every Muslim has that level of iman. And if you're sort of just scanning it and putting it away, and it's one item out of 100, then hopefully that's not going to be, although you should look for an alternative job, but you will not tell a person to stop working and stop receiving their rizq because of a small amount of haram taking place. Because if you look at it, there's haram everywhere. right? The company that you are working for, you are dealing with, there's going to be haram in it, that you are connected to in some way or some form or the other. And we've talked about delivery as well. Delivery has the same issue. A person works in the post, they don't know what they are. There's going to be, festive seasons, people are sending bottles of alcohol and what have you. It's something that very difficult to avoid. And usually people who are working these jobs, they're not working them out of choice. Nobody dreams to be stacking shelves in Tesco's. That's not their dream. It's out of necessity. And if they don't do that, then there's no work available to them. And if there's no work, then they put themselves in a difficult situation. So for that, ulama have allowed it. And this has nothing to do with madhahib. Although there is a weak opinion in the Hanafi Madhab where a Muslim in a non-Muslim land is not restricted by this hukum of giving alcohol, serving alcohol and all of that, if it is done to given to a non-Muslim. But it's extremely weak opinion that is rejected by the Hanafis themselves because of the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so what you see those Muslims doing, one should make dua for them and not sort of look at them with tahqir or belittling that, look at this person, he's doing haram. And if you can approach them and you think that that person may not know, then it may be, but do it in a nice way, right? Don't go to a person and tell him what you're doing is haram, because they're just going to ignore you. But say it in a nice way and say, look, I don't know if you are aware or not. I just thought, I'll remind you. Yeah. And there are ways, and you have rights actually in your workplace. When you are employed, then you have rights. And if your religion requires you to not touch certain items, then you can make a case for yourself. So it is haram. However, if it is part of a bigger sort of set of duties and it's only happening every now and then there is some leeway. It doesn't become halal, but you won't say that income is haram. And that person will be encouraged to either speak to their superiors to stop having any contact with alcohol, or they look for an alternative job in the meantime. In the meantime, they can work whilst looking for something that is that does not include stacking alcohol or touching bottles of alcohol.
Alright, Sheikh, this is something that's connected to a previous question. Would it be permissible to work for a non-Islamic financial institution, but you don't directly work, like say, in the bank? So you're not actually dealing with the money or anything like that. You're either in management. He's put the management as an example, but you can perhaps sort of work in sort of the digital area of the bank as opposed to the actual money of it. So you're not working for the bank per se, but you're working.
No, if you're employed, you can't be employed by the bank. If you are self-employed and you are offering a service to the bank, maybe there may be some leeway there, because you're not responsible for whatever they're doing. You're just creating a system, looking over a system. That can be debated. But if you're employed by the bank, you receive a salary. Then, regardless, even security or cleaning or all of that has been sort of struck off. By ulama, that you can't, on the basis of وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ, that help each other in righteousness and piety, and do not help each other in sin and injustice. And that is exactly what a bank is doing. It's committing a sin through interest, and it is huge injustice to the people who are in need of loans and what have you.
Allahu Akbar.
But if you are self-employed, then you would say, okay, the person is self-employed, like Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayhi states that, the person who sells grapes, even if he knows that part of his grapes are going to go to make wine, he's not responsible for that, because he's selling grapes, he's selling a halal product. What that person does with it is their responsibility. Just like you rent a house to a non-Muslim, what they do inside is not your responsibility. Or else then you can't rent a house to a non-Muslim who's going to drink alcohol in it and commit zina in it and do all of these haram. But you know, as long as your transaction is not affected by the interest, which means that you're providing a service and you're taking a payment for it, then I think there's some leeway, inshallah.
It's really interesting to see like the perspective of the ulama with regards to this sort of this subject in particular. You can take that principle of وَتَعَوُنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَوُنُوا عَلى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ and apply that to pretty much every single area that you could possibly work in, right? Anything that's associated with haram, you can apply that principle. But that principle isn't applied in all areas that are associated with haram. It's the financial institutions that it's applied to quite heavily, right?
Well, it will be the financial institutions, it will be alcohol and tobacco businesses. So the brother who asked the question about some Muslims serving alcohol, you can't have a Muslim as a bartender because that's only haram, that's all you do. I mean, but in a job where the majority is halal and a very small percentage is going to be haram, that's where the leeway and the sort of exemptions are made.
Yeah, so it's in those things that are clearly haram. But what my point was going to be was that obviously we recognize the role of the financial institutions with regards to the immense inequality that is taking place in our modern day, right, in our modern era now. And it's interesting to see how the ulama, their stance against those sorts of institutions are very, very staunch. No, don't work, don't clean, don't do anything for them. Right? Don't even associate yourself with them. So it's very like that divide between, and it's only because of what's happening and the sort of the power that they have and the leeway that they have and the things that they're allowed to get away with their quantitative easing and I don't know what else they do, right? In order to just help the rich stay rich and the poor, stay down here, right? So, right? So that wealth, the whole reason why these things are evil inherently is because wealth stays now within a certain sort of demographic of society and it barely ever escapes. And if it does, it escapes the trickle down thing, right? It escapes in like pennies, right? It's just like there's like millions of people, billions of people trying to catch those pennies that are falling from these high places. So subhanAllah, that's very, very interesting. Very interesting, subhanAllah. Let's move on. Is it permissible to ask a sister to see her without hijab before marrying her? Sheikh, this is really common, Like it's happened to myself in the sense that there's the sisters that I know that I've helped to get married, and they've been asked this question, take your hijab off, let me see what you look like with that.
A funny sheikh of from Algeria, he says to the sisters, somebody I think asked this question, and he says, look, Allah and His Messenger have permitted the man and the woman to look at each other for the sake of marriage. One look, one sitting. Now, he says, you get sisters that come to a proposal and they're dressed like they're going out, so in full hijab, right? And if you're in full hijab, then what is the person going to look at? What is it that's going to, okay, your face is shown, but rather than your face, a person, how is he going to be, he can see you like that outside, what's the point of of the sitting then? Do you know what I mean? So actually it's recommended, because Rasulullah permitted it, it's recommended that a woman reveals some of her zina when she is seeing somebody for a proposal. And the way to do that, or the limit, is the way you would dress in front of your father and your brother and your maharim. That is how you dress for a proposal, right?
So the 21st century women, Sheikh, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think that's a good idea.
Well, anyway,
you come out in your 90. I dress like this all the time at home.
The point is a woman is not generally does not reveal her when she goes out and she is in contact with strange men, she is wearing something like a jilbab or a coat or an overcoat or something like that covers the clothes that she wears to adorn herself, right? Her robe or skirt or whatever it is, shirt, or all of that, which is worn to adorn yourself, and then you put something on top, and that's your jilbab or your jacket or your overcoat or whatever it is to cover that. Allah Azza wa Jalla says, do not allow strange men to see the clothes that you adorn to beautify yourself with. So that she can wear in front of a person who is coming for a proposal, and she can remove her hijab.
Allahu Akbar. SubhanAllah. It's a bit of a delicate situation, right? Because
the reason
now
for this
I know what's going through his sister's head when she's watching this, right? It's like, Sheikh, every suitor that's going to come, I'm just going to sit there like, yeah, here's my head.
Yeah, well, how about if you say, in that case, then the person that you marry, he sees you, right? And then you divorce, and then you have to apply hijab. You can't say, well, he's seen me
you
already.
made that commitment now, Sheikh, innit? So you're comfortable with showing?
What do you mean? No. Once the divorce has...
Isn't it?
Yeah, but now you're divorced. You didn't hear the second part.
Oh,
now you're
okay.
divorced. So does it mean that you can still remove your hijab because he's already seen your hair?
No.
No. So you have to apply hijab there. So it's Shari'ah that tells you when you put hijab on, when you take it off. So the Shari'ah says that you are permitted to take it off. Don't start thinking that every suitor is going to see my hair and every suitor is going to see my, the style of dress that I usually wear. That's not Shari'ah is not. It's firstly what is transmitted. The problem is that it's against culture, right? In some cultures, I would say, it's against culture. People are not used to it. There's like cultures, Afghani culture. I hear that people are still getting married without seeing the spouse, and it's like an honor thing. No, nobody can see my daughter or my sister until she is married. But that has nothing to do with Sharia.
Subhanallah, there you go, man.
I mean, you're allowed to have it. You're allowed to have it, but then don't complain if after you get married you sort of,
But it's perfectly okay though, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
If someone if someone decides not to.
Yeah,
not to
absolutely. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you're free to do that.
You're perfectly in your rights to do that. Because I'm kind of on. I know guys now, and I know girls now in our society, especially here in Finchley, London, UK in general, right? Yeah, girls aren't on that flex, man. You know what I mean? Especially if she's mutahajjiba, she has the hishma in her. She's dedicated to her deen. Not every suitor is a suitor, and sometimes you get sort of like family dynamics as well, where they're bringing in, your parents are bringing in people, your other families are recommending people. There's men coming in left, right, and centre because you're a eligible bachelorette, right? And if sort of now like it's okay for you to take your hijab off, it's okay for you to show yourself a little bit. So, and you're not really comfortable as a woman to do that to every suitor that you even feel in yourself that I don't think I'm going to go anywhere with this guy, but I'm just seeing him for the sake of seeing him anyway.
Yeah, that's a different matter. That's a totally different matter. And what I mean by this is that there has to be a moment where the suitor sees just the suitor. It's not his entire family. So generally, proposals, it's like the whole khandan and family comes, the granddad, the uncles, and everybody. We don't ask the sister to remove her hijab and just kind of no. But if there is a way of having a private conversation, and which is needed, especially in this day and age, you need to talk about matters.
Man, that's for sure.
And if you can do that with your mahram present. Let's say, for example, your father or a brother or another woman present, and basically they go into another room, and that's when potentially, if a sister wants to reveal or remove her hijab, she is entitled to do so. If she doesn't want to, it's fine. Islam doesn't say you have to do it. It permits it and says you can do it.
Yeah. So there is scope for to do that. So that basically going back to the question is that a brother asking this question, he's not going to be in the wrong for doing that.
No.
I think that's important to highlight.
Yeah.
Whether the sister decides to do it or not, whether she's comfortable with doing it or not, that's another question, right?
And perhaps the way to do it is if you have trust in the person and you don't feel completely comfortable in revealing your hair, removing your hijab or what have you, then it can be done with a picture. Do you know what I mean? And then somebody will say, I don't want that picture to be saved. Well, send the picture to his sister or to his mother, so it's not on his device. But at least he gets a look
Allahu
at,
Akbar. Well, like navigating through the field of like khutuba and marriage and proposal is it's a minefield, Sheikh. It's a minefield to say the least. All right, let's move on, Sheikh. How do you prevent?
Can I just say one thing?
Of course, you can say whatever you want, Sheikh.
All of this is the reason it is permitted. First of all, when a man comes,
That's good. Yeah,
the man doesn't wear hijab, right? So
yeah.
yeah. So
Better not.
okay, so you're able to see, the features of the face properly.
Yeah.
You can see the hair. You can see all of this. When a sister is wearing hijab, or even more so, if she is wearing niqab, for example, then there is a conversation, there's communication, but a person is not able to see. And Rasulullah said that by seeing, a person may be inclined to making one decision or the other. So if they see features, because that is part, the physical attraction is part of importance of marriage.
And even psychologically, so men are more visceral, so they'll watch things and they'll see things and they'll be stimulated by what they see, whereas women aren't like that. That's even scientifically proven as well.
And you don't want to be. I mean, if you have the confidence to sort of speak about, and we all have, perhaps defects from birth or something that has happened later on. But if your hijab is covering that, and then a person sees that, and that becomes a big problem, you can't judge him to sort of, well you're making a judgment on appearance. No, because it's a like and dislike of a person, and they're free to choose if they want somebody who has.
Yeah, that's totally cool, man. To find somebody attractive
has,
or not.
Certain hair color,
Receding hairline.
Yeah, receding hairline. So the man should remove his topi, just not to fool the sister. But that's the point is that something that is covered, that may potentially, and because beauty is face. Specifically, the focus is on the face, because somebody might take that and say, well, does a woman then have to reveal herself completely, or a man have to reveal his satar? No, but the face is very important in comparison to the rest of the body. A person is going to feel attracted to the features of the face, and part of those can be covered with the hijab.
The sister can ask him to remove his hat, topi.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't
Brother,
come
let me see your hairline.
Let me see your hair.
Let me see how straight your hairline is.
You're not dying, are you?
Those bold patches I need to see. There was a practice in Central Africa. One of my friends was from there. He used to say that when there was a prospect of marriage, the women used to go and see the women, and the men used to go and sit with the men and used to speak about whatever they spoke about. What the women used to do, they used to, obviously the woman doesn't reveal all of herself, but she's not wearing hijab and stuff, and she's like in her comfortable clothes and her home clothes and stuff. And so they'll check and they'll see her like her body type and stuff, and then they'll decide whether she's, I don't know, they have this like firasa about whether she's able to have children and how fertile she is and all this other sort of back in the day stuff. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I'll tell you, in North Africa, those who are Moroccan, perhaps Algerian, Tunisian may have had the same. Is that people did not have baths at home. There were public baths, right? So men would go to a bath and women would go to a bath. And obviously the satar for a Muslim woman with another Muslim woman is from her belly button to her knee, right? So only that has to be covered, just like men with other men. So there was a ritual of or a custom of the potential spouse or wife would go to the public bath with the mother or the sister of the man, to ensure that there was, just as you said,
no defects and stuff.
Because Shari'ah makes, so these things are very, whatever you think about it, Shari'ah says that these can become real problems, right? And those can be grounds for divorce, actually.
And that's what ideally what
Sahabiya came to Rasulullah and said, Ya Rasulullah, my husband I don't know the words to use, but basically cannot have regular marital relations, and that is affecting me. So Rasulullah said that you get divorced from him. Do you know what I mean? So, but why? Because the point is that there is an attractiveness and there is a relationship, a physical relationship that protects from haram. So if that's not happening, major defects, and the talaq can occur immediately after a marriage if a man or a woman has a defect in their bodies that cannot be revealed, obviously, and was not revealed in the communicated or spoken about, and then it's later found out, then those are actual grounds for divorce. But obviously it's not like a small thing. We're talking about a major defect that is going to impact the physical relationship of husband and wife.
Inshallah. All right, let's move on, Sheikh. How do you prevent yourself from Nazar and any types of black magic?
Wear niqab if you're a woman. If you're a man, then cover, wear your face covering outside. And ad'iyah.
Yeah, Quran, dhikr.
Ad'iyah. That is the way to protect yourself.
Muwadhaba ala salat al-khams on time, at the start time.
Your salah, your adhkar, morning and evening, even if it is just ayatul kursi in the morning, ayatul kursi in the evening, 3 quls 3 times in the morning, 3 quls 3 times in the evening, in order to protect yourself. And what is also important is don't flaunt the blessings that Allah has given you. Not to people that are not your well-wishers, right? And then there is a practice of, when in our culture we had like, if a baby is born, they'll put like a black dot with kuhul or something like that.
Really?
Yeah. Or sort of cover the features and things like that, so that people are not,
no way.
Yeah. They'll do certain things in order to take the focus away from perhaps the beauty and focus on the
Subhanallah.
But don't flaunt it, whether that's in your physical self or your wealth or the blessings or your capabilities. Don't talk to them, don't talk about them to people, and know that you can give nazar to your own self. It's never just others and strangers. A mother can give it to her daughter, a father to his daughter, to his son.
And don't envy others. Don't have any jealousy of others, because jealousy يأكل حسنات كما تأكل النار الحطب, right? So envy and jealousy, they eat your good deeds, and good deeds come in the form of thamarat, right? So the thamara of those good deeds as well. So the goodness in your life, the blessings that you have in your life, envy just eats up on all of those things. So you're sitting there thinking you got nazar. You probably do, but it's from your own self and your own hasad that's caused those things to deplete from your life.
If you find yourself, you can have ghibta and envy a person. Sort of, you see a person that has a blessing and you say that I wish to have that same blessing. But it's when you are asking the question, why do they have it and I don't have it?
I need to have that.
You really need, if you have that,
I hate them for having it.
Towards, whether it's towards strangers or towards family members. Often this happens between family members, right? One sibling has, intelligent children, the other sibling doesn't, whatever, they're doing well, performing well at school, they're better looking than my children, and things like that. And there's this hatred and jealousy that happens. You need to check yourself. Your iman is very weak. If you are jealous of other people's blessings, your iman is very weak. Is not good for you from a spiritual perspective, because it destroys your hasanat, as Sheikh said, your reward. And it's actually living with that thought, always comparing yourself to others, is a horrible way of living. You see somebody that has been, you don't have hair, somebody's got amazing hair, mashallah, be happy for them and continue with it. Why fret about something that is temporary, right?
So lack of contentment with what Allah has given you.
Eventually we're all going to get bald.
Sheikh, remove your topi. Alright, let's move on, Sheikh. Assalamu alaikum, Imam. Why is it that in Hanafi Madhab, lobsters and crabs is not permissible, yet other madhahib is permissible? Which one is correct?
Well, the problem is not actually the Hanafi Madhab, is you selecting the Hanafi Madhab. Who told you to be Hanafi?
Be Maliki, guys, be Maliki. Kulu halal.
No, on a serious note, the reason is that they have a difference of opinion about what is permissible from the sea. So the other madhahib sort of say everything in the sea is permissible, and the Hanafi madhab says no, actually only fish is permissible. So whatever is not considered fish, for example, mammals and things like that, whales and dolphins, they're not considered fish. They're not classified as fish, and because of that, they are not halal. Yeah. So lobster falls in that category. It's not a fish. It's the word I don't know how to pronounce it properly, so I won't pronounce it. But yeah, it's
crustacean. Crustacean.
That's it.
Subhanallah. Look at that.
Jazakallahu
GCSE. Whatever the subject was.
Now, how they made that differentiation, I'm not aware of. You know, that only fish is permitted. Why? I don't.
In my readings of the
this is like
in my readings of the Hanafi Madhab, it's very limited. But what I've read in that is something along the lines of everything in the sea is permissible, right? According to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. And whatever is dead from the sea as well is permissible to eat that meat as well. So the differentiation is in whether that particular animal is in the sea permanently and cannot survive outside of the sea, or whether it is
that is a way that
so these crustaceans, lobsters, crabs and stuff like that, they survive outside as well as inside. So they're not permanently sea-based or
and whales
water-based.
and dolphins, they breathe outside. They actually come out in order to breathe. Yeah.
So there's that principle and that differentiation as well. So, but yeah, inshallah, all good. The calamari story I think I've shared with you guys before. A Muslim man married a Christian woman and they have a baby. The woman wants to raise the child in a Christian way. The husband agrees to baptize the child. What are the consequences, punishment for him as a Muslim according to the Shari'ah?
Brothers and sisters, a Muslim man cannot agree for his child to be non-Muslim. If he agrees to his child being non-Muslim, then he becomes non-Muslim.
Wow.
Yeah. And this is often ignored when people say, oh yeah, well, Allah Azza wa Jal has permitted for us to marry non-Muslim women who are Christian or Jewish. Absolutely. But one condition is it's a chaste woman, a woman that looks after her iffah and chastity, but also that she agrees that the children will be considered Muslims. If she doesn't agree that, then you can't have children or you can't marry. So a Muslim cannot agree to his child being baptized.
That's like rida bil kufr.
Yeah, and rida bil kufr, to be pleased or accept disbelief. With your wife, that's a different matter. She doesn't belong to you, but your child, you have an authority over that child, and that's why it's not permitted.
Responsibility,
yeah, because somebody may say, well, you're marrying a Christian woman, what's wrong with having a Christian son or daughter, or Jewish son or daughter?
To clarify that, Sheikh, it's like what the fuqaha say about a child who carries the Quran without wudu. That the child shouldn't do that. If he does do that, then the responsibility is on the wali. Yeah.
A child who steals or commits any sin for that reason, the sin goes to the father or mother.
So in this situation, if he's pleased, if he's happy for his child to be fall into kufr or to be kafir,
it's an act of kufr.
Then the responsibility falls on his shoulders.
Yeah, I'm not saying, and this is only in childhood. And the way to deal with this is, look, from a religious perspective, my child needs to be Muslim. The reason for that is that the Muslim, and this is just logically, it's not bigotry or anything of that sort, right? Islam accepts Musa and Isa and Muhammad. So by my child being Muslim, he's going to revere and respect the prophethood of Isa and Musa, and he's going to accept and respect and hold his mother at a high regard for being a people of the book. But if he's Christian, he doesn't accept Muhammad. If he's Jewish, he doesn't accept Isa and Muhammad. Do you know what I mean? So in childhood, the child will be considered Muslim. And then when they are an adult, then the father is no longer responsible, right? If he wants to be Christian, Jewish, whatever, that's entirely up to him. Yeah.
Okay, there's a couple more questions, inshallah. Maybe we can.
So the way to deal with it.
them.
Sorry, Sheikh.
Yeah, Sheikh, go for it. Yeah.
The way to deal with it. How do you deal with it? And this is very important, and I realize that the brother may have. So is it a question from a brother?
It is a question from a brother.
Right, and he says what? He's agreed for the child to be baptized, or the child has been baptized.
The husband agrees.
Okay, so first of all, he needs to take that back and say, I wasn't aware.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as it pains me to say, if she refuses and they can't find common ground, then it's going to be incumbent on him to divorce her.
Allahu Akbar.
Yeah.
What a situation.
Because that is the only way he can make very clear that he disapproves of his child being non-Muslim. And perhaps every person knows their relationship. So if he thinks that that is going to, he shouldn't threaten with divorce, but say that potentially our relationship could be, from a religious perspective, is going to be in question if we can't deal with this. And you need to apologize on your side that you did not do your homework, and that Christian woman is entitled. You should have communicated that to her before she decided to marry you. So it's kind of, you have a responsibility that you have not fulfilled. However, it does not mitigate and sort of say, oh, well, it's okay because you're in this situation now, you did not know. No, Islam says you did not know. Well, you will have to divorce the woman if she disagrees and you can't find. So have a gentle and lenient approach and a discussion. If you can't have the discussion yourself, then seek to have the discussion with an Imam present, where he's going to explain things in the best possible way for her to take on board. But if that doesn't happen, then I'm afraid that is the inevitable outcome. And if a person does not do that, then they are committing an act of kufr. Their iman is in question, and only Allah knows what that person's, how his judgment will be.
Difficult situation, Sheikh. Calls for difficult measures to be taken. There's two more questions, Sheikh. We'll breeze through these, inshallah. Could you tell me, if a child is born and there is nobody available to whisper the adhan into the baby's ear, would it be permissible to play a recording of the adhan into the baby's right ear?
The person who is going to play it should do it.
Even if it's the mother or...
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be a man,
necessarily
right?
have to be a man, no?
Yeah.
No? It can be the mother, it can be...
What about equality here, guys?
What if the father wasn't able to be in the room?
Yeah, so the mother can do it.
Yeah.
The mother can do it. And it doesn't have to be done immediately. It can be done moments after.
Inshallah, mashallah. Alright. Does a woman have to cook? And have to is in capital letters here. Does she have to cook? Does she have to cook for her husband? What does a woman have to do Islamically for her husband, and what is from culture? Okay, the second part of that question is really loaded.
Yeah.
The first part, Sheikh, about have to cook. She
has to cook. Because without cooking she won't eat.
So she has to in capitals, yeah?
She has to.
Without cooking, you would. But Sheikh, he can always get takeout and stuff, right?
Yeah, but how much takeout? No, on a serious note.
Tiny monthly budget.
When a sister asks this question, this is not the problem. There is something under the question that we're not seeing.
Allah.
We're not aware of. Because generally a woman doesn't ask whether she has to cook or not. When she starts to ask that, then there's potentially conflict and there's debate about what your responsibilities are, what my responsibilities are, or maybe the relationship is breaking down and she's sort of saying, you know what, I'm going to do just the bare minimum that is required. So we'll answer the question, but we will tell the sister that you need to seek advice in relation to your marriage. There is a difference of opinion among scholars. Some say that the woman does not have to cook. There is the a strong Hanafi position, a very strong one actually, that the cooking and cleaning and taking care of the household is not a responsibility of a woman. Her responsibility is to take care of her children and not her husband, right? And then, but at the same time, she can't refuse her husband the call of her husband if he's fulfilling his obligation and his duty, the major responsibilities he's fulfilling them. So I can't see how you are going to have a sort of okay relationship that you sleep together, but you're not cooking for your husband, unless you have a reason for not doing that. Let's say, for example, you both are working. Then the question arises, right? Do I have to do this? I'm working, financially contributing to the home. Then, if you are working, and let's say, for example, you are working equal hours as your husband, then both of you should cook, right? Simple as that.
It's not going to sit well with the brothers.
So nobody will tell you that you have to cook, or a woman has to cook, because there is a difference of opinion. And if you take the one that says actually she doesn't have to, when she does that, she is rewarded. It's a goodwill gesture and considered as sadaqah on her part. A great reward in it, absolutely. But and some other ulama actually say no, it's not fair to say that the husband has to provide and go out and work without the sister having to do something to
doing
fulfill
her part, right?
Part, because the union of the family, the husband cannot be expected to work outside of the home and do all of the chores of the home.
And let's face it, in our economy, Sheikh, no one's gonna be able to afford like a khadam, like a servant to come in, unless you're living in like Dubai or something like that. Cool, but
you've made a very good point there as well, that the woman that does not have to cook in Sharia, the reason they have said that is not that husband and wife are living together and she just
chills and puts the feet up.
The husband is able to provide her with
some servant, to be able to,
or
a maid,
employ
or
someone that is going to come in and cook. And
modern times employment.
And if that is the case, and if a woman has grown in that environment, only then the husband responsible to provide that. So let's say, for example, her mother, they come from a well-off background, and they had maids and servants and what have you. Then the husband has to provide, and if he cannot provide that, then he should make it known at the time of marriage, because she's accustomed to lifestyle, right? Maybe she's focused on something else, education, business, da'wah, whatever it is. It doesn't mean that she doesn't cook and sits there playing with her phone and watching TV, soaps on TV. Then, what? But rather, she's utilizing her time in looking after her children, and maybe she has ailing parents that she's looking after and what have you, and she cannot do both.
She's doing something constructive at the time.
Then there's.
But in our society, Sheikh, that's a very small percentage of the Muslim population that has the actual ability to do that. I mean, everybody that I know that comes to the masjid and doesn't come to the masjid for that part, they don't have that.
And I'm going to add something that came to mind, that when a sister generally asks me this question, that does a woman have to do this for her husband, and it's something that actually is good practice, and it makes the relationship better, and it's not an obligation. Then I say, sister, remember that what your husband is providing you, he doesn't have to provide it. All his responsibility is providing shelter, clothing and food, the basics, and like really the basics. So if he cuts down
to the basics,
you're not going to like it. And he can use that same argument, I don't have to, or even worse, he can go and get married to somebody else.
But
I say that is permitted.
We don't know if it's a woman who's asking the question.
We could always flip it around. The whole thing is
both ways.
Yeah, but it just doesn't. The way we're sort of talking about it, it's not really conducive to what a happy, sort of strong, cooperative relationship looks like. It's never sort of like, what are you going to do for me? And what are you going to do for me? I'm going to do this, and I'm not going to do any bit more. And I'm going to do this, and I'm not going to do any bit more.
Yeah,
it's
you've
just like,
got
what? Do you
problem
guys
in
love
your
each other? Do you not love each other? Why are you together? What's wrong with you?
No, even if you don't love each other, you don't have that way of dealing with your work colleagues and with your friends.
True.
You know.
True.
And what Islam does is it places principles, but if you sort of say, I'm only going to do the principles and the obligations that Islam says in a marriage. Islam doesn't talk about emotions and all of this because you know people are different in that, and they have culture and the makeup of men and women, and so for example, Islam won't tell you that you have to tell your spouse that you love them, or you have to I don't know, buy gifts for your spouse. It's not going to tell you to make it an obligation, but we know that without that you cannot have a stable and a good relationship. These things are needed to a certain degree. So and I actually read that in a book of about marriage, that the Sheikh was saying, if you try to strip everything away from marriage and only apply the obligations of Islam, you're not going to have much of a marriage left.
Allahu Akbar.
And that's not the intent of
real talk.
The intent is Islam puts a structure and then you fill in the gaps, not what is culturally acceptable in your society. You take all of those things off and you say, well, we're going to stick with just what Islam says. I'm going to give you bread and water and we're going to live in we're 10, but we're going to live in a 1-bedroom flat that's shelter. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't work that way.
Allah understand. All right, Shaykh, there's one final question, but based on the time, inshallah, we'll deal with that next week. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala.
Is it a long question?
Is a woman's voice part of her awrah?
Yes and no.
Yallah. Next week, inshallah, we'll go through the details of the yes and no answer, inshallah. Ta'ala. Jazakallah khair to everybody, mashallah, who sent in their questions. It was fantastic. We had a wonderful array of subjects to cover. I'm sure everybody would join me in thanking Shaykh Osama for coming in and answering those questions. And alhamdulillah, it was a delight to be here with you guys. And inshallah, hopefully next week at the same time,